Hi, welcome to Christine's Corner. As you see, it's Grandma Christine. I'm going to be reading you stories, some fairy stories. Our other lady's not well today, and I'm going to be reading to you from this book, The Best Traditional Fairy Stories by Lorne Leet Hodge, illustrated by Ronald Ebelton. And I have a lot of great stories in here. I read these to my sons when they were young. And as you can see, that's why it's a little taped up. A lot of great stories. But today's story is Jack and the Beanstalk. Have you heard of Jack and the Beanstalk? It's a great story. It starts with a poor widow lived alone in a little cottage with her son Jack. He was a kind and happy boy, but a lazy one, who did nothing to help his mother. The day came when there was no money in the house. Though she turned out every cupboard and looked under every board, the widow could not find a single coin. "Oh, dear me," she exclaimed. "Whatever shall we do?" And she wrung her hands in misery. Then she had an idea. "There's only one thing for it," she said. "Daisy will have to go to market." "But, Mother," said Jack, "Daisy's been our cow for years and years." "I know, and I shall miss her, but what else can I do?" "You must take her to market in the morning." So Jack's mother gave Daisy a special feed that night, and he helped her to polish her hoofs until they shone. Daisy must look her best next day. "Mind you get a good price for her," said his mother as Jack set out leading Daisy by a long rope. Jack did not hurry. It was a nice day, and he felt very proud to be going to market on his own, even if he was sorry to say goodbye to Daisy. He might buy himself some sweetmeats at the market. His eyes lit up, and his step quickened. All at once, a strange man came alongside him. "Good morning, young sir," he said. "Where are you going?" "I'm going to market to sell this fine cow," said Jack. "She's called Daisy." "No need to go to market," said the man. "I want to buy a cow, and Daisy will do me very nicely. I'll give you these 5 magic beans. If you plant them, they will make you very rich." Jack did not hesitate. He took the beans in their little brown bag, patted Daisy on the head, and told her to be a good girl. Then he ran all the way home, the beans rattling in the bag with every step. "Mother, Mother," he called. "I'm back, and I've sold Daisy." "My, that was quick," said Mother, drying her hands on a cloth. "Well, did you run all the way to market? It's a fair step to be back so soon." "No, I never even went to market," Jack told her. "I met this man on the road, and he bought Daisy." "Well, what price did you get? I hope you didn't let her go cheaply." "Look, Mother, the man gave me these magic beans for Daisy." Jack began to explain, but his mother cut him short. "You stupid boy," she said, and boxed his ears. "You have sold Daisy for a bag of worthless beans. Whatever will become of us?" And she tossed the beans out of the window and sent Jack to bed without any supper. How could he have been so silly? As you can see, his mom and Jack coming towards him, his mom, and they live in this little small hut. They're not very rich. So they needed Daisy, the cow, for some food. Jack was so hungry, for he had no supper. He woke early the next morning. The sun was shining, but what a surprise he had when he looked out the window. In the middle of the garden, where his mother had thrown the bag of beans, was a huge plant, its leaves as big as plates. "Mother," Jack called, "come and see." And they both went out into the garden to stare. Neither of them had ever seen such a plant. It went up and up and up and up until it seemed as if the top would reach the sky. "Jack, come back," his mother called. But her son had his foot on the lowest branch and was climbing higher and higher until he was soon out of sight. After a while, Jack stopped to have a breather. Climbing was hard work in the sun. He looked down and could see far, far below him the roof of his home. How small it looked! He looked up and saw that the plant seemed to be reaching up to the fluffy clouds in the sky. At last Jack came to the end of the branches and stepped off into a huge field. In the distance he could see a castle, so he made his way towards it and knocked on the door. He did not know it, but a fierce orc lived there. His wife opened the door and inched and peered out. "What is it?" she said. "Please, may I have a drink of milk?" asked Jack, for he was very thirsty and hungry. "Come in," said the old woman, and gave him some milk and a piece of bread. Jack was famished and ate happily. "Hurry up!" Excuse me. "Hurry up," said the old woman, her head on one side, as if she was listening. "What is it?" asked Jack, his mouth full. "My husband is coming back," said the old woman. "He mustn't find you here." And she pushed Jack into a huge oven. Thump, thump, bump. The very floor shredded, and Jack in the oven wondered what was happening. It sounded like an earthquake. The orc, the biggest man you have ever seen, with dark brown hair and whiskers and thick, thick arms and legs, came stamping into the room. He looked all around him and sniffed. Then he began to shout, "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." "Oh, hush," said his wife. "Eat your breakfast. It's all ready for you." So you see Jack, he's right here in the oven. Luckily, it's not on. See how big all the stove and everything is. They're pretty big. And here you see the orc. See how big he is? And there's Jack. Soon the only sound was the giant eating and drinking. He ate 3 whole lambs, 10 loaves of brown bread, washed down with a gallon of ale. "Ah, that's better," he said, wiping his mouth. "Now bring me the hen that lays the golden eggs." He ordered and sat back in his huge chair. "Lay," he ordered when the hen was set before him. The hen laid a golden egg, then another and another and another. Soon a dozen shiny golden eggs lay on the table. The orc put them all in a basket. Then, feeling sleepy, he laid back in his chair, and soon the room shook to the sound of his snores. Jack, who had peeped out of the oven when he saw the hen, crept out and tiptoed past the sleeping giant. Then, quick as he could, he picked up the hen and, pushing it under his arm, ran as fast as his legs would carry him back to the beanstalk. Just as he reached, the hen began to cackle, and Jack could hear the giant running behind him. But quickly he slid down the beanstalk and ran to his mother. At first she did not believe the story of the orc and the castle and the magic hen. She was glad they had a hen at all. "Lay," Jack ordered the hen, setting it on the table. The hen laid a golden egg. "Lay another," said Jack again, and so it went on until they had so many eggs they did not know what to do. Jack and his mother had plenty of money now and wanted for nothing, but Jack soon grew bored and wanted to climb the beanstalk once more. This time, Jack ran to the castle but did not knock on the door in case he met the orc's wife. He climbed in an open window and hid behind a milk churn. He had not long to wait. Once again, the giant came into the house, and the whole building shook with every step he trod. He looked more frightening than ever, and Jack crouched lower. Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I grind his bones to make my bread, roared the giant again. He looked all around the room, but Jack kept out of sight. Come along and eat your supper, said his wife. It's some beef cooked the way you like it. You see Jack with a hen? He's trying to get away. That's a big giant. Ah, there's the giant and his wife, and he's got lots of gold in his hands. Jack watched as the giant ate plate after plate of beef, the fat running down his whiskers, washed down with foaming ale. At last he had enough. Bring me my gold so that I may count it, he ordered, and his wife brought him 2 sacks that chinked and jingled as he tipped them out onto the table. First of all, the orc ran his great hands through the gold pieces, lifting them up and laughing as they fell. He loved his money. Then he began to count it, making first one pile, then another, and another, and another, until the whole table was stacked with gold. Tiring of this, the orc sat back in his chair and fell asleep, his snores blowing the curtains at the other side of the room. I got to get a drink. Please, this is exciting, isn't it? Quickly, Jack stepped out from behind the milk churn. He picked up a money bag and filled it with gold pieces until he could carry no more. Then he ran as fast as his legs would carry him until he reached the beanstalk. There was no sign of the giant, but Jack did not wait and slid down to the bottom. His mother was very pleased with all the gold pieces and told him not to go up the beanstalk ever again. Time passed, and Jack would look up at the beanstalk and long to climb it just once more. At last he could bear it no longer and climbed up quickly one morning before his mother saw him. This time he slipped in the door, which stood open, and was just in time to hide behind a chest when the giant came in. He was even bigger than Jack remembered. Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread. The giant was in full voice. He looked all around him and sniffed, but he did not see Jack. Come along, said his wife. I've 10 fine turkeys for you to eat, roasted to a turn. And Jack watched as the giant ate first one, then another, and another of the crisp turkeys until there was nothing left but a pile of bones. Once again he lay back in his chair. Fetch my harp, he ordered his wife. It could play us a tune until I feel sleepy. So the orc's wife fetched a beautiful golden harp, which she set on the table. Soon, by magic, it began to play the most soothing music Jack had ever heard. How his mother would love it. Before long, both the orc and his wife were fast asleep. Jack crept from behind his hiding place and picked up the harp and ran out of the castle. As he reached the door, the magic harp called out to the orc, Master, master! And the orc woke up with a start. Jack sped across the fields, and he could hear the orc close behind him. His legs had never run faster, but the orc was getting nearer and nearer. As he reached the beanstalk, Jack could see the orc a few yards behind him. Stop! He bellowed. Come back here! But Jack slid down the beanstalk as if it was slippery. Mother, mother, he called. Bring me an axe, hurry! The orc was already on the beanstalk, which was swaying to and fro with his weight. Jack seized the axe and began hacking at the beanstalk with all his might. He could see the orc just above him. There was no time to lose. With a great cracking, rending sound, the beanstalk began to break. Then, with a mighty swish, it fell to the ground, the orc clinging to its branches. It was so long it seemed to stretch for miles, but there was no sign of the orc. No one ever saw him again, but there was no... Next day, the magic beanstalk had all disappeared. Some dried beans lay on the path, and Jack's mother put them in a jar for safekeeping, and she and Jack lived happily ever after. Wasn't that a great story? Now they're not poor anymore, and they got rid of the giant. Now we have the Beauty and the Beast. Long ago and far away, there lived a rich merchant who had 3 daughters. They were all beautiful, but the youngest was by far the loveliest and was always known as Beauty. This made her sisters jealous, especially as she was her father's favorite. The merchant gave his children everything they could wish for, and they lived in luxury. Then suddenly his luck changed, and the merchant had very little money. He had to sell his fine house and take his daughters to live in a little cottage in the country. As they were poor, all 3 had to work hard. The 2 elder sisters grumbled all day, but Beauty sang while she worked. As long as her family was together, she was happy. One morning, the merchant had good news. One of his ships had come home with riches from the east. He hurried to meet the ship at the port. "I can bring you all presents, my children," he said, smiling. "What would you like?" "Our father, please. Oh, Father, please bring me a sapphire and diamond necklace," said the eldest daughter. She loved fine jewelry. "Father, I would like a red dress with a white lace on the collar," said the second daughter, who loved fine clothes. "Don't forget the lace," she told him. "I'll remember," laughed the merchant. "And what about you, Beauty? What shall I bring for you?" "Father, I should like a red rose better than anything else," said Beauty. So the merchant rode off to the port. But when he arrived, he found his goods had been stolen, so he had no money after all. There was nothing to do but return home. With a heavy heart, he set along the road. What could he tell his daughters? As he rode along, hunched in misery, the merchant noticed that snow was falling. Soon it would be too thick for him to go on. He must find shelter. Snow lay all around him, and night was coming on. He could hear the wolves howling, but there was no shelter. Suddenly he found himself in an avenue of orange trees, sweet-smelling and green. The end was a huge castle. Very surprised, the merchant hurried along to seek shelter in the great house. Though the mangers were full, there were no horses, nor did anyone answer when he pulled the bell. The door was open, so he went inside. Everything was very rich, with fine rooms and bright fires burning in and fire grates. Gratefully, the merchant held out his hands to the fire. At last, tired out and warm, the merchant fell asleep. When he awoke hours later, the fire had been made up, and a little table had been laid beside him, filled with food. "It must be meant for me," thought the merchant, and ate a good meal. It was all very strange. And there's the beast. Later the merchant wandered through Later the merchant wandered through the rooms, each one more magnificent than the last, but he saw no one. In the garden it was as if it was midsummer, with the birds singing, the flowers sweet smelling, and the bees buzzing lazily above. Then the merchant remembered his promise to Beauty. He saw a bush full of the most beautiful, sweet-smelling roses he had ever seen, and leaned forward to pick one. At least he could bring Beauty a present if he had nothing for the other girls. "How dare you?" the merchant jumped. A fierce voice spoke behind him, and he turned the rose in his hand. Who said you might gather my roses? Asked a terrible voice, and he saw a terrifying beast towering above him with horns and great huge paws from which sheath claws grabbed at him. The poor merchant dropped the rose and fell to his knees. How dare you steal? Thundered the beast. I have saved your life, let you sleep in my house, given you food, and now you steal my roses? No one steals my flowers and lives. You must die. Oh, forgive me, begged the merchant. I am truly grateful that you saved my life and gave me food. I looked all around to thank you. Truly I did. Well, why did you steal my rose? The beast asked again. Let me explain, I beg of you, pleaded the merchant. He told the beast his story and how, though he could not give the elders their jewels and clothes, he could keep his promise to Beauty. The beast looked at him. At last he growled, Well, I will forgive you, but on one condition. You must give me one of your daughters. Oh, have mercy, begged the merchant, but the beast would not listen. 1 month from now, he said, you must bring one of your daughters to me, and she must come of her own free will. If she does not come, you will die. And the beast disappeared. The merchant found his horse saddled and waiting in the courtyard with a chest of gold and jewels strapped to his back. A fresh rose lay in a silk scarf. When he came home, the merchant's daughters were waiting. Did you bring me my necklace, father? Asked the eldest, kissing him. And my dress, the one with the lace collar? Asked the second. Beauty just kissed him. Welcome home, father, she said. Beauty, here's your rose, he said, handing it to her, and she clapped her hands in delight. Where did you find such a rose? I have never seen one like it. Oh, thank you, dear, dear father. But the merchant shook his head in sorrow. Later, as they sat around the fire, he told them all that had befallen him on his journey. What shall I do? He asked them. What shall I do? Never fear, dear father, said Beauty. As it was for me, you stole the rose, and the beast was angry. It is only right that I should go and live with him. Do not be afraid. All too soon, the month passed, and the merchant knew he must take Beauty to live with the beast. Sorrowfully, he helped her to pack her clothes, and they set off on the horse, and their father had brought home. No sooner were they on the road than it all changed, and, because it was a magic horse, it took them to the beast's castle. Light shone from every room, and the soft music floated out into the gardens. Once again, there was no sign of the beast, but everything was ready for Beauty. What a lovely place, Beauty cried as she and her father went from room to room. At last they sat down to eat. Then they heard the beast's footsteps coming along the passage, and Beauty clung to his father in terror. Good evening, said the beast. Is this Beauty who has come to live with me? I am Beauty, she said timidly, still holding her father's hand. Welcome, said the beast. Will you stay here with your father when your father leaves? Beauty could hardly speak for her fear, but she gulped back a sob. Yes, she whispered, I will stay with you. Next morning, the merchant left with presents of fine dresses and jewels for his sisters. Beauty tried hard not to cry when he rode away, but she felt very much alone and afraid. She went to her room and cried herself to sleep. As she slept, she dreamed that sweet music was playing and a soft voice was saying, Do not cry, Beauty, and will be well. Now, I only have a minute left, so I can't finish the story right now, but I can tell you how it ends. The beast came, and he seen how she was very kind to the Beauty, and he asked her, will you marry me? I could never marry you. Very well, he said sadly, and walked away. Beauty was glad she had not made him angry when she refused him. She was still a little afraid of him, though he did all he could to please her. It was just that she wanted so much to go home. One night when the beast asked her, Do you find me so ugly then, Beauty? Will you ever marry me? And she told him, No, you're not so ugly, but I can never marry you. He even said that she could go home. And but at the very end, they did end up together, and they found he was a prince. She had grown to love the beast, and happily she was that he was really a prince. Isn't that a great story? Sorry that I couldn't read the whole story. Maybe next time you can tune in and I'll read it from the beginning to end. So thank you for watching Christine's Corner, and we'll see you again next week.